In 1973, a 28-year-old director had just made one of the most profitable movies in the history of Hollywood, and the studio was ready to pay him for it. His next project was strange, a space opera. A quote, "Western set in space," unquote. More than 40 studios had already turned it down before this one agreed to make it. And even the studio that said yes didn't believe in it. For directing it, they offered him a raise from the $150,000 he'd made on his last film to $500,000. He turned it down. Instead, he asked to keep his salary exactly where it was. In exchange, he wanted two things the studio considered worthless: the merchandising rights to the film and the rights to any sequels. The studio said yes immediately. They thought they were getting the better end of the deal. The film was Star Wars, and 39 years later, the man who asked for the worthless stuff sold his company for $4.5 billion. This is a money story. Let's get into it. To understand why Fox said yes so easily, we've got to understand what merchandising meant to a movie studio in 1973. It meant almost nothing. 10 years earlier, Fox had poured money into merchandise for a film called Dr. Dolittle, toys, games, tie-ins, and lost badly. The film flopped, the merchandise flopped harder, and the lesson the studio took away was that movie merchandise was, at best, a distraction, and at worst, a way to lose more money on a film that was probably already going to lose money. And Star Wars looked, to nearly everyone at that studio, like exactly the kind of film that was going to lose money. Science fiction did not sell tickets. The budget was already a concern. Nobody in that building thought children would want plastic versions of the characters in it. So when their director said, essentially, "I will take less money now if you let me keep the toys," the studio did not see a negotiation. They saw a young filmmaker taking a pay cut to hold on to something they considered a footnote. Fox kept the box office. Fox kept the theatrical and home video distribution. Lucas kept a category of revenue that, as far as anyone in that room could tell, was not really revenue at all. Both sides were betting on a category of income that had never been tested at this scale. Fox bet it was worth nothing. Lucas bet it was worth everything. Only one of them was right. It helps to understand why Lucas thought differently than everyone else in that room. He had already seen, in a small way, how much people wanted physical pieces of a story they loved. Collectible cards, model kits, the kind of thing that turned a passing interest into an ongoing relationship with a franchise. He was not a finance executive making a spreadsheet projection. He was a filmmaker who suspected, correctly, that an audience that loved a world enough to watch it twice would also want to hold a piece of it. Nobody at the studio was thinking about the audience that way. They were thinking about ticket sales for one weekend, not a relationship that could last decades. Here's the part almost nobody tells, and it matters because it shows this wasn't a lucky accident. It was a strategy, and he repeated it. Star Wars became the highest-grossing film of its era. Within the first year, the toy company Kenner sold roughly $100 million worth of Star Wars action figures alone. Lucas's instinct about merchandise proved right almost immediately. So when it came time to make the sequel, The Empire Strikes Back, Lucas did something even bolder. He self-financed the entire production himself, using money the first film had already made. And in the new deal with Fox, he pushed further than before. He negotiated to take back full control of the merchandising outright, along with the soundtrack, the publishing, and nearly every ancillary right that existed. Fox kept a theatrical and home video distribution window of several years. Lucas kept ownership of everything else, and he financed the risk himself to get it. Think about that decision. The first time, he traded a raise for rights nobody valued. The second time, having proven the rights were valuable, he put his own money on the line to take back even more. Every deal after that, the two prequels included, ran on essentially the same terms he had built. Lucas financed the films, Lucas owned them, and a studio was paid a distribution fee to carry them to audiences. By the time the sixth film in the saga was finished, in 2005, one thing had become unusual in an industry built on studio ownership. The entire future of one of the largest franchises in the world belonged to a single private individual. That's a strange sentence to write about a major Hollywood franchise. Studios exist, structurally, to own the things that make money. That is the entire purpose of a studio system. Yet here was a filmmaker who had, through two separate negotiations 15 years apart, ended up owning more of his own creation than any of the executives who greenlit it ever expected to give away. So what did Fox actually give away in that first meeting? By some estimates, the Star Wars merchandise alone has generated more than $20 billion since 1977. Action figures, video games, books, apparel, and everything else carrying the name. Add the sequels Lucas also retained the rights to, and total franchise revenue across every category reaches into the tens of billions. None of that flowed through Fox's ledgers. All of it flowed through Lucas. Every action figure, every video game license, every piece of apparel with the logo on it, all of it traced back to a clause a studio lawyer signed off on without much of a second thought, because in 1973, there was no precedent for what it would become. In October of 2012, George Lucas announced he was selling Lucasfilm, the company holding all of it, the films, the merchandising rights, the sequel rights, everything built on the foundation of that 1973 negotiation, to the Walt Disney Company. The price was $4.05 billion, roughly half in cash and half in Disney stock, confirmed in Disney's own SEC filing. Run the numbers side by side. He turned down a $350,000 raise. 39 years later, he sold what that decision built for $4.5 billion. For comparison, consider what the raise itself would have been worth if he had taken it, invested it conservatively, and let it sit for those 39 years. Even at a generous long-run market return, $350,000 does not compound into $4 billion. It's not even close. The gap between those two outcomes is not really about investing. It is about the difference between being paid for your labor once and owning a piece of something that keeps generating income long after the work is finished. Everyone in that Fox conference room in 1973 thought they knew what was valuable. The film was valuable. The theatrical release was valuable. The box office was valuable. What Lucas asked for, the merchandising, the sequels, looked to trained industry professionals like scraps. The lesson here isn't simply to own what you make. Lots of people own things that turn out to be worthless. The lesson is sharper than that. When you are negotiating and someone offers you a bigger paycheck instead of a piece of something they don't believe in, that is precisely the moment to ask which one they actually think is more valuable. Because their answer is a real signal, not a guess. Fox did not undervalue Star Wars merchandising because they were careless. They undervalued it because absolutely everyone in the industry, at that moment, agreed with them. It had never worked. There was no reason to expect it would work this time. Betting against consensus on a genuinely untested category is not usually smart. It's usually wrong. What made this different was that Lucas wasn't merely betting against the consensus. He financed his own follow-through. When Empire Strikes Back came around, he didn't just ask for more rights. He put his own money behind believing in them, which is the part that separates a hunch from a strategy. Most people will never get offered a choice between a raise and a stake in something unproven. But the underlying trade shows up everywhere in smaller versions. Equity instead of a signing bonus, a percentage instead of a fee, a slower path with upside, instead of a faster one without it. The people who take the second option are usually wrong. Once in a while, they build an empire. If this one hit you, hit subscribe, because next time we're telling you about a man who made the exact opposite bet, in the exact same era, in the exact same industry. He wrote the picture, and when he had almost no leverage, he took a modest fee to get the part. The film became one of the most beloved in movie history. Decades later, with every reason in the world to ask for a piece of it, he still doesn't own a single percentage point. You don't want to miss it.